The sun hung low over the horizon like a ball of molten copper, bleeding its light across the parched plains of Dusty Creek Ranch. The wind carried a dry hum through the mesquite trees, rattling the barn doors and stirring the smell of hot dust and horse sweat. It was a quiet, cruel kind of evening, the kind that only the Wild West could give. Sheriff Eli Carson urged his horse forward, dust flying beneath the stallion's hoofs. He'd been riding hard for over an hour, his heart pounding faster with each mile. The message had reached him in town. A rancher's daughter had been bitten by a rattlesnake out near the north fence. Her name was Clara Whitfield, and she was as tough as the land she worked, but snake venom didn't care how tough you were. Eli leaned low, whispering to his horse, "Come on, Thunder. Don't fail me now." The desert blurred by, rust-colored rocks, broken fences, and patches of sagebrush flashing in the dying light. Every second mattered. The sun was sinking fast, and once night fell, there'd be no light to see, no help for miles. When Eli finally saw the ranch house rising out of the dust, his stomach turned cold. A few cattle stood restless near the corral, mooing nervously. The front porch was empty, but a hat and a bucket lay abandoned near the fence line. He knew then. She hadn't made it inside. He jumped off the horse before it had even stopped running and sprinted across the yard. "Clara!" he shouted, scanning the open ground. Then he saw her. She was sitting in the dirt near the broken fence post, one hand gripping her leg just above the ankle. Her face was ghost pale, and sweat glistened on her forehead. A coiled rattlesnake lay dead beside her, its head crushed with a rock. But the victory was hollow. The damage was already done. Eli dropped to his knees beside her. "Clara, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. "Eli, it bit me. I tried to kill it, before it could strike again." "You did good," he said, his voice steady though his heart was racing. "Where's the bite?" She pointed weakly toward her lower leg. Eli followed her gaze, and saw it. 2 angry puncture marks just above her boot, already swollen, surrounded by a sickly purple ring. "It's swelling fast," Clara whispered. Eli tore open his saddlebag and pulled out a small knife and a strip of clean cloth. His mind raced. The nearest doctor was in Drywater, 20 miles away. She'd never survive the ride unless he slowed the venom down. He ripped his bandana in half, hands trembling slightly. "You're gonna feel some pain, Clara, but I need you to trust me." Her lips quivered. "I do trust you." He tied the cloth tightly above the wound, forming a crude tourniquet. The pulse below it slowed a little, but the swelling kept rising, creeping higher up her leg. Eli could see the poison working, fast and cruel. He wiped the sweat from his brow. There was no time to think, only act. He took his knife, sterilized the blade in the flame of his match, and looked her in the eyes. "I'm sorry, but I gotta draw it out." Clara nodded faintly, her breath coming shallow. "Do what you have to." Eli made 2 small incisions near the bite, his jaw tightening as she winced. Then he pressed down, forcing some of the darkened blood to the surface. "Stay with me, Clara," he muttered, his voice low and urgent. "Don't you dare quit on me now." The wind whistled through the fence posts. Thunder, his horse, pawed the ground anxiously. The desert was silent except for Clara's uneven breathing and Eli's quick, determined motions. Somewhere beyond the hills, the sun slipped away, leaving only fire-colored clouds over the horizon. And in that lonely patch of land, one man fought against time and venom, praying he wouldn't lose the woman fate had thrown into his path. Eli's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths as the last streaks of sunlight disappeared behind the canyon ridge. The air grew cooler, the desert shifting from gold to gray. He could barely see now, just the outline of Clara's face, pale, drawn, but still alive. He'd done what he could, but the venom was still spreading. The swelling reached her calf, her skin hot to the touch. Eli untied the tourniquet slightly to keep her blood moving, his mind spinning through every piece of knowledge he'd picked up from old trappers and soldiers. Snake bites killed fast out here. The only thing faster was determination, and Eli had plenty of that. He looked at Clara, trying to sound steady. "You hang on now, you hear? You're not leaving me out here with just the coyotes for company." Clara tried to smile, but her voice was weak. You always did talk too much, Sheriff." Her attempt at humor nearly broke him. He felt a tightness in his throat he didn't have time to name. He soaked a cloth from his canteen and dabbed her forehead. Her pulse was faint, but steady. He needed to stop the poison. He needed to do more. Without another thought, Eli leaned forward, pulled up the torn hem of her dress just enough to reach the bite, and pressed his lips to the wound. He drew in the tainted blood, spat it out, and did it again, ignoring the bitter taste and the pounding in his head. Clara gasped softly, the pain sharp, but she didn't pull away. When he finally stopped, he wiped his mouth and tied a clean cloth around the wound. "That's all I can do for now," he said quietly. "But it might buy you time till morning." She opened her eyes and met his gaze. "You saved my life, Eli." He shook his head. "Not yet, but I'll try." The stars began to appear overhead, glittering like silver nails across the dark sky. Crickets chirped from the dry grass. Somewhere far off, a wolf howled, a lonely sound that sent a chill through the night. Eli gathered some dry brush and struck a match. The fire crackled to life, casting warm light over them. Clara's face glowed in the flicker, her features soft but strong. She was a fighter. He could see that now more than ever. He poured a bit of whiskey from his flask, offering her a sip. "This'll burn worse than a sermon," he warned. She managed a faint laugh before drinking. "Guess I'll survive both, then." Eli smiled for the first time that night. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders and sat beside her, the two of them facing the fire. "You know," Clara murmured after a long silence, "Pa always said you were too stubborn for your own good." Eli chuckled low. "Guess that's the only reason you're still breathin', Miss Whitfield." Her head rested back against a sack of feed, eyes half closed. "Maybe so," she whispered. "But I'm glad you came." He looked out across the dark prairie, the faint outline of his horse standing guard near the fence. "You think I'd let you die alone out here?" he said softly. "Not in 1,000 years." The wind carried a cool breeze across the sand, stirring the flames. The night felt endless, but Eli stayed awake, watching over her. Every few minutes he checked her pulse, loosened the bandage, and gave her water. She drifted in and out of sleep, whispering fragments of old ranch songs under her breath. As dawn crept over the land, painting the sky in pale gold, Eli felt her stir. The swelling had stopped spreading. The worst had passed. When her eyes fluttered open, she saw him still there, dusty, sleepless, but smiling. "You made it, Clara," he said, his voice rough with relief. "You're safe now." She tried to speak but couldn't. Instead, she reached for his hand. For a long time, neither of them said a word. The only sound was the soft crackle of the dying fire and the wind sweeping through the open plains. In that quiet morning light, with the ranch rising behind them and the desert stretching endless ahead, two hearts that had once belonged to the wild found something steadier, something that could outlast venom, fear, and the cruelest of western nights.